Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 92 of High Spirits. I am Anna Ray Grabstein, and we are recording Thursday, June 19th, 2025. And I have a great show for you today, but I don't have my regular co-host, Ben Larson, today. So this is going to be an incredible episode with an amazing guest, Tiffany Chin, and we're just going to get into it together. But before that, I wanted to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth, which is a day that we commemorate the end of slavery in the U.S. It marks June 19th of 1865 when the Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas. And it was 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, but there were still people that didn't know that the slaves had been freed. So this is a holiday that has been celebrated in the Black community for generations, and it became a federal holiday in 2021. So I wanted to call it out today, as we all should be celebrating liberation and resilience. As for Trump, he infamously scheduled a rally on Juneteenth in 2020, saying that he made Juneteenth famous and that nobody had ever heard of it. I would say that didn't really land so well. Certainly didn't land so well with me. But anyway, today is a day to celebrate freedom and reflect on how far we've come and how far we still have to go. And that is certainly indicative of what we talk about here on this podcast as it relates to cannabis. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. For today's show, we're going to be talking about relentless grind in cannabis. Our guest today isn't just surviving in it, she's building across retail, brand, product, hemp, licensing, and culture. But before we bring on Tiffany, I just want to highlight 2 new pieces of news, and then we'll dive in. SB3, which we've been talking about a lot on the pod, is still up in the air as of recording. This is Lieutenant Dan Patrick's full hemp prohibition and criminalization measure in the state of Texas. And basically what we're looking at is that Governor Greg Abbott has until June 22nd, which is Sunday, to veto this bill. Otherwise, it becomes law. And that means that the entire hemp intoxicating THC space in Texas will become illegal. At the same time, there is an expansion on the table of the medical cannabis program in Texas that is moving through the legislature under HB 46. And it could become law. It could also be vetoed by the governor. And June 22nd is really going to be an important day as we look at what the opportunity is in this massive market for consumers. Everybody is paying attention. The Hemp Business Council of Texas delivered 150,000 signatures to urge a veto, which is a real statement, but we'll see if it makes a difference. And then the last piece of news that I'll highlight is that this week, the Congressional Research Service put out a report that's saying that Congress could reschedule cannabis faster than going the administrative path through the DEA and HHS. Theoretically, yes. Legislation through Congress can definitely make laws change a lot faster than what has been happening and dragging out for years now at the federal level. But unfortunately, the legislature has continued to be no help on cannabis reform for a while now, so I'm not holding my breath. I did find it pretty interesting, though, that the Congressional Research Office is spending time putting out reports such as this and thinking about cannabis. So I think that that is a plus. All right, let's bring on our guest. Tiffany Chin is the business and strategic force leading Snoop Dogg's cannabis empire. From launching Leafs by Snoop and co-founding Casa Verde Capital to overseeing Death Row Records cannabis division with everything that happens underneath it, that includes things like their Swede dispensaries, their branded products, their hemp business, their international expansion. Tiffany has redefined what it means to scale a celebrity cannabis brand with integrity, humor, and a lot of hustle. She's a Wharton grad with deep roots in entertainment and in legacy cannabis, and she brings fluency across licensing, product development, retail ops, and cultural storytelling. Without ever losing sight of the consumer or the culture. So I'm really stoked to bring on my new friend, Tiffany Chin. Welcome, Tiffany.
Oh, thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much, Anna Ray. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, awesome. Welcome. My understanding is that you're joining us from Germany today. What are you doing in Germany?
So this weekend is the Mary Jane Festival here in Berlin. So we are actually out here. We landed yesterday, and we are exhibiting this weekend. Today's the B2B day. Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the consumer facing or public facing days. And I think it's a lot about just discovery and seeing how we can close or shrink the world a little more with what we have with this plant, and understanding what branding looks like here, where it's a medical market. But yeah, so it's really exciting to see all the different brands pop up that we normally see in this space. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are from the US and have first built our cannabis experience in the US, but it's pretty awesome to see the whole world turning on. And the truth is that people have been loving and consuming cannabis all over the world for quite some time now.
Yeah, forever. I mean, for millennia. I mean, I'm Chinese, and I think, that's where we call it dama, like that's where farms and fields and acres of cannabis have come from in the past. And it's definitely been used as medicine for much longer than we've ever used it recreationally. So yeah, I'm glad to see that things are kind of turning around and turning on.
This idea that people have been consuming cannabis for thousands of years is kind of what I always come back to when the times are so tough right now in certain parts of the industry. Is like, what I know to be true is that people are not going to stop
Yeah,
consuming cannabis. Like,
correct. People will not stop. Yeah.
yeah, the struggles will be different and the economic environment will shift and change, but people love weed, and that isn't going to shift and change.
Exactly. Exactly.
So if we center on the consumer, it's a good place to start. So I want to dive in to all the stuff that you are doing in cannabis, because it is wide. And as I was going through it, learning about what you're up to, at first it seemed a little bit chaotic in that,
Yeah.
like, you've got stores and brands and online presence and different countries and states and all this stuff. But at the same time, it's all unified around Snoop. And
Yeah.
I would just love it if you could give us an idea of what are all the things that you're working on in
Yeah,
cannabis.
that's a great question. So things kind of really start off with, I would say, Death Row Records, right? When Snoop purchased Death Row Records in 2022, that's right around when he called me and mentioned that, and I understood why he told me that. There was a vision for what to do with this brand, which was not just a record label, but had become larger than that over the 30 years of the existence of that record label, right? And having such a, for lack of a better term, notorious type of past, when Snoop purchased it, he wanted to revitalize and shed that notoriety, even though the brand name is Death Row. It's more about transparency and moving forward in a unified sense, right? And not having blue or red or west or east or whatever else, but really coming together. And one of the first things he actually said to me was, he was like, I don't know how to do this in cannabis. This is my vision in music, in records, because I know what that looks like, right? I want to be able to use Web3 technology to essentially provide transparency of people's work and have them compensated in a very fair way. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, interesting. He's like, so for example, I can tell through this technology how long Anna Ray worked on this particular record. And then if Tiffany spent 2 times the amount working on that record, she would get 2 times the royalties or the splits. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying. I know what you're trying to do. We want to do the same thing in cannabis. And so with the Death Row Records brand, it is definitely a nostalgia brand. It's from the 90s. And the way that we used to consume cannabis in the 90s was, I hate using this like this phrase. It's definitely a little cliched, but it's like, everyone's putting 5 on it. And you're maybe buying like, an ounce, maybe an eighth or whatever else at the party, at the house party, and you're rolling maybe 3 to 5 blunts. You're passing around, you're having a great time with friends, and you're not out a crazy amount of money, right? And something that one of my head of ops likes to say about what we're trying to do is unboof celebrity cannabis, because the play that we've seen, and I will say that the prior manager before me, my boss, was a little also fell victim to this, right? Where it's like, oh, like people are just going to love buying Snoop's weed. Like the quality is not going to matter. We got to find the Walmarts and the Costco's of cannabis production. And I'm like, given my limited knowledge in actual cultivation and growing, that's not going to yield the best quality product. And people are going to be like, what is this? Like Snoop is not smoking this. And even though we made a big splash maybe 10 years ago with the Leafs by Snoop brand, we were one of the first to market. We worked some really great deals with wonderful partners. I have nothing bad to say about our partners. The cannabis just wasn't at the Snoop level, right? Like I would say maybe at the level of the average smoker, but was Snoop smoking it? No.
Yeah.
One thing I can
Consumers
definitely,
demand quality, like they just do, to go
or
back. And you want repeat purchasing. You want people to be loyal. Like they'll try anything once, but to
yep,
come back is a whole nother deal.
exactly. And just to make sure that we are actually standing behind the tenet of like, hey, I put my face on this, but I actually smoke it, right? And so one of the proudest moments and things that I can say is in the search for stuff that we were doing in 2022 before we launched in 2023 was that Snoop actually smokes this weed, right? We worked with him to figure out like I mean we've known for a long time what he smokes, right? And then we're trying to work with the actual growers, or we're growing it ourselves, or we're consulting with the grow in particularly another territory that we're working with. This is how you have to get your cannabis grown to get it up to this level. This is how you have to cure it. This is the humidity levels. These are the, this is the flowering, whatever else, all the stressing that you need to do, right? So there have been quite a few grows that we were like, we're not ready to do a deal with you yet. But if you, in the next 6 weeks, if you implement these differences and we see the change, so 2 of them have made those changes. And then we subsequently did sign with them because their weed went from B plus to AA plus. And so it's always
I'm
teamwork.
picturing this like quality spectrum of
Yeah.
like the Snoop levels all the way on one side. It's pretty awesome. And I have to say, like the fangirl in me is like, how cool is it that when Snoop wants to start a cannabis business, that you're the call that he makes to be like, here's my idea, Tiffany. This is what I
Yeah.
want to do. So what was it that led to that moment in 2022 that you had that relationship with
Yeah.
Snoop?
So in 2020, I had a baby. And so I took some time off to be at home. That was the height of COVID. We were all working from home as well. And I ended up leaving the company, the management company that was managing Snoop at the time. I ended up finding a completely different job in fitness and technology, which are some of my other passions. And literally 4 days before I was supposed to start that job, like the Thursday before, Snoop called me and he was like, hey, I know you left the management company, but I wanted to see, and I knew what he was going to ask when his number came up on my phone. And I was like, what is this call? Like, I'm a little nervous, but I know
You
what.
answer when Snoop calls, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I pick up, right? And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he was just like, I know you left, but would you like to come back and work for me directly? There are some people that I've tried, like, I have a lot of people on my team. They've tried their hand in this industry in this particular role. And they know good weed, but they don't know the industry, right? And they don't have the context that you do. And I just feel like I trust you with stuff that you've done for me in the past. And I was like, I'm starting a new job in 4 days. And he was like, damn, what's the contract on that? I'm like, 1 year. He's like, then it went silent for like a good 5 or 10, which is a long time on a phone call, right?
Yeah.
He was like, I'm gonna call you every couple of months and see what you're doing and see how you're doing, right? So like literally to the date. I'm gonna imagine he must have had like a calendar reminder for himself. Hit up Tiffany. To the date, like 3 months later, he calls me. 6 months later, he calls me. 9 months later, finally, he's like, okay, it's now or never. It's okay if you don't want to come back. I get it. But if you do, now is the time. If you don't, I need to go find earnestly someone who can replace you. So he actually waited for about 9 months for me to say yes. And for those last like 2 or 3 months, I was working 2 jobs. But I did come back with him. And that was the 9 month mark was right in 2022, January, when he had purchased Death Row Records. So it was that in that moment, as I was getting to the back end of my contract, as well as that little note of like, this is the brand behind it. This is what I want you to do. And I think it's going to be amazing. I could see the vision. And that's when I jumped and I was like, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And so now that you're in it and you jumped and you talked about all these different places that you're playing kind of at a high level,
Yeah.
it seems like you're taking on a lot. And
Yeah.
this is really volatile space, and all
Sure.
these markets have all these different nuances. Uh, do you think that the choice to be building multiple businesses at once and going into multiple different channels is the right path?
So I think that's a really good question because a lot of people kind of see the variety of what we're doing or what you might call breadth as potentially damaging for like breadth instead of depth, right? You know, in lieu of depth.
Yeah, I say like wide versus deep. Yeah,
Yeah.
all those things. Yeah.
And I think the issue with such a, I know we're 15 years, 10 years in, you know, when did Colorado and Washington first legalize? 2014. When did they first start
2014.
commercializing? 2015, right? 2015, 2016 for Canada, respectively. We're really early into this industry, right? If you think about prohibition, it took like 80 years for us to really get into the swing of this three-tiered system of alcohol and beverages and stuff like that. And so bets are being made, lots of bets, lots of money is being like placed on these bets, and 80-90% of the time the bets do not come through. And so this is the general advice when it comes to investing, or when you're playing, I don't know, roulette or craps, is diversify, right? And when the time comes, to consolidate in the right way and to make sure that you have a more clear vision moving forward once the industry makes some regulations, or like, for example, like you just said in your intro, SB3, right? Like that is a huge decision around anyone's hemp business. Texas is giant. It's $8 billion.
Biggest net market in the, yeah, maybe in the world. I don't know.
And it was almost designed that way because of like no cannabis, but Farm Bill, okay, right? It was almost designed that way.
Yeah.
And so with all that, we just have to make sure that whatever bets we are placing, we are able to move forward and consolidate if the bets we made are not correct. Does that make sense? Like I'm not trying
Totally.
to.
And I know that you have background in actually working with Casa Verde Capital, which is a venture fund that's invested into cannabis. And so you're used to looking at deals and using that kind of VC mentality of, you know, I'm lucky if 10 to 20% of these investments pay off, and hopefully they pay off at like a 10 to 20x, because all the other ones are going to die. I just don't often hear about an operator thinking about their businesses that way. And I think it makes sense. But how do you choose what to prioritize on? I mean, you're one person. I know that you have a team. I'd love to hear about them, but I know it's also not a huge team.
Correct. So
how do you choose what to focus on?
We do like to stay lean, and a lot of what we like to focus on honestly really depends on what Snoop likes to see, right? And what makes him happy. Obviously, bottom line matters. Obviously, you know, having the correct partners and operators who we're working with, licensing, that greatly matters. But for example, he's loving the Swede stores right now. We only have two, right? They're in LA, near LAX in Inglewood, and there's another one in Amsterdam that he has yet to go to. But because everyone from Kevin Hart to Taleb Kweli have been rolling through and just hitting him up saying, your shop is amazing, he is now trying to figure out a way to just go out there by himself without getting, like, usually he doesn't move for less than XYZ number of dollars, right? But he is trying to figure out a way to go out there because he's like, everyone keeps telling me I gotta go, Tiffany. And I'm like, it's better that other people are telling him this than me, right? Because I can hype up the store as much as I want to. But when his friends, his buddies are going through and seeing what they have experienced personally from him translated to this other location, they're like, this is him. This is Snoop. This is what his actual like compound, his studios feel like and smell like and sound like. So I would say the stores, the Swede brand, that is something that he's really, really interested in. The hemp side of things, he is a very how do I put it, like magnanimous, every person man, right? He is not trying to sell you a $400 pair of shoe. He is trying to sell you an $80 pair, like a regular priced pair of shoe, right? He is not trying to, you know, sell art for a crazy, anyway. In that sense, he wants to democratize access essentially to cannabis. And so over Father's Day, we launched our home version of all of our hemp products, right? Technically hemp products.
Cannabinoid, you can say that.
Yeah. We all know that. We all know what happens and what the difference is and everything, if there is one. But essentially, we're doing BOGOs, we're doing like promos and stuff that we might not be able to actually advertise on Meta. That actually has changed recently, hasn't it, Anna Ray? I don't know if you saw that recently, but Meta has slowly allowed.
But then they said that you could advertise, but then they also went and shut down a whole bunch of accounts. Like in the last week.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm not sure which writing or verbiage or guidelines we're supposed to abide by, but maybe that'll shake out quicker in the next week or two. But, like working through that and having him say, hey, people in 32 plus states can now access my stuff, right? At the same time, with our regulated market partners, we understand that this is hurting them. And so we don't want to cannibalize our own business or be bad partners. So, for example, our partnerships in New Mexico, Michigan, Ohio, California, Nevada, we are not going to, I mean, a lot of those states already don't allow hemp to be delivered, but we are not going to allow delivery into those states because you can get it delivered. You can buy it in the store and you can try out our amazing product for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a common strategy that companies that started in the regulated cannabis market who have expanded into hemp are taking
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
and I think that makes a lot of sense just to navigate the complexity of keeping your partners happy and
Yes.
at the same time, I think that the data tells us that the customers that are buying hemp products online are not the same people that are going into dispensaries. And
Agreed.
especially because I know you guys launched a beverage as well in the hemp space. And that's like a completely different consumer base than the dispensaries.
I would love to talk about that in a second, but like that in and of itself is another portion that like me and Snoop and our team are very bullish on just because of the hemp thing, right? Like the accessibility and the ability to proliferate it, distribute it in 32, 38, however many states there are that allow it. But then on top of that, like being a beverage, right? I often say this, we're not born knowing how to eat. We are most definitely not born knowing how to smoke, but we are all born knowing how to drink. And so like it's the easiest. There's no hump, there's no hill, there's no barrier to entry in terms of, hey, try
Mhm.
it, right? Like most people will gladly try a drink that is correctly and appropriately labeled and has all the information on it. And so, Anna Ray, if you don't mind, like maybe last Monday we had Snoop won the BET Icon Award and we had an after party for him. And I was notified maybe only 36 hours prior to that we were having this party. And so it was the weekend. A lot of distros are closed, or if not all the distros are closed over the weekend.
Yeah.
We're going to get the flour for 800 people, right? So instead, I was like, you know what? We have 1,000 cans. We have more than 1,000 cans. So we brought those to the party, and the amount of people who actually would, in lieu of a joint, because we still had some loose joints, in lieu of a joint, would take a beverage. It was 50-50, Anna Ray. And that to me was so surprising and
That's awesome.
so great to see. And there were people there that had never smoked, never ever consumed cannabis that were coming back for like second, third. He was like, I just don't drink. I don't like the way alcohol makes me feel. This makes me feel great and calm, engaged, but not like I can't drive home. And I'm like, oh, don't say that out loud. But yeah, sure, great. Like that. I'm so glad that this is your first foray into this world.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the history of how long people have been consuming cannabis for thousands of years at the beginning, but one thing that I think that the hemp space is proving is how many more consumers there are to come
Yeah.
into the market that aren't being served by the regulated either adult use or medical markets. And that within the complexity of navigating the tough business environment and prices bottoming out, like those are like those silver linings of optimism that I'm like, dude, there's so many more people that are excited and interested in cannabis if we can just reach them in the right way
Exactly.
and with the right products. So yeah, I'm excited about that, and I think it's really fun.
I think about my parents a lot who are very like, no, like anything that you have to combust, like anything that's everything's a narcotic, right? Everything from nicotine, tobacco, all the way to cannabis to like obviously any of the harder stuff,
Sure.
right? For them, I've always been excited. I was like, edibles, like you guys can just eat a chocolate and feel it, you'll be fine. But I think the beverage is going to, especially a low dose beverage, that's going to be the way to go because that's something they're familiar with. Like once I drink 3 to 5 minutes, I should feel a little drunk or a little tipsy. Like I should feel that, right? And so to have that more instantaneous response rather than the delayed onset of a regular edible, I think that's going to get my parents like more interested and a lot of people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s more interested in this space.
Totally. Well, so I want to pivot a little bit and talk about Snoop's brand and how what you guys are doing with cannabis really is a licensing machine of putting the different brands that have Snoop behind them out into the world in all different types of
Yeah.
ways, whether it be in a store environment or or in a jar, in a can or whatever. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I've noticed about Snoop over the past couple years is that his brand has really evolved. Like as someone that has, it's probably like he's a little older than me probably, but I've like watched Snoop for much of my life. And
Yeah.
he's gone from being a character that was, I think, like a lot more hard and edgy to somebody
Sure.
that's a teddy bear. He
Yeah.
hangs out with Martha Stewart. He's on the Today Show. Even his style has kind of softened. Um, and yet, I think that the brands that you guys are putting forward, Death Row Cannabis, like they're kind of hard. They
Yeah.
remind me of that earlier brand, which I know that you were talking about. It is based on that, but it seems like Snoop is really trying to broaden
Yeah.
his accessibility, and he's kind of carrying forward this vision into the mainstream of cannabis just by being him, and that seems
Yeah.
pretty powerful. And I'm wondering if like how you see that, and if you guys are looking to bring more kind of teddy bear Snoop
Yeah.
brands into the market to appeal to those people that see him on the Today Show or on the Olympics with Martha.
So I would say that there are a couple things I want to touch on with this, is because this is a really good question. And you're right. The brands are not synonymous, right? Snoop Dogg is Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg, the man, owns Death Row Records, but Death Row Records is not the same as Snoop Dogg, right? Like they are two separate brands. Death Row Records is a 30+ year legacy brand in terms of like having existed in the early 90s and kind of being notorious, like we had talked about earlier, right? Like a lot of violence, a lot of negativity. However, because it's from back then and we're trying to recreate the nostalgia, it's more around the good times of like really good West Coast hip hop. That's what we're trying to focus on, as opposed to like guns and cars, right? Like I don't want to get too deep into that, but like, yeah. So in that sense, we are trading on the name. We are utilizing this 30+ year old name, which I also want to talk a little bit about. There's a reason why on our packaging, on our branding and everything, the word cannabis is not on the product, right? Like it looks like, I wish I was at home because I could show you our vanity packaging, but it says Death Row Records, and it's the man in the chair with an updated logo, just a little bit, right? His hood is pulled up a little bit, the rag over his head, and then his right wrist is actually breaking free from his restraints, pulled up to his mouth with a little cherry on the end of a J. So there's that update that is supposed to be a little friendlier, as opposed to like, the full on covered head and like black and white or like very flat. But there's the one of the other main points is that there's no brand in cannabis that's been around for 30 years, right? Like I would say maybe some other like really old legacy brands or even media brands, right? Like maybe a High Times, which is interesting around that story. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe maybe Raw, maybe Futurola, right? Like OCB or but at the same time, when you think about like new actual cannabis brands, right? Like when you're Jeter's, Kiva, Heavy Hitters or Stizzy or whatever, they don't have the ability to trade. They've done great. They've done amazing. Their brand recognition is top notch.
But they created it from the ground up. You're
Exactly.
eating on
Like
something that already.
we're
Yeah.
lucky. We get to start 5 steps up, right? Like, and why not utilize something that has that connotation attached to it? At the same time, NRA, we're trying to stay away from anything too like, Snoop has a kids show. It's called Doggyland, where he's a cartoon and he's rapping about like affirmations and loving yourself and being kind.
I love that shit, by the way.
Me too. Like that stuff, like, and you see the kids dancing to it. It's really amazing. But I also want to make sure that we're confident that if we ever make a misstep, we are going to be made an example out of, right? More so than I think even these multi-million, multi-billion dollar companies. Snoop Dogg will bring headlines in for anything that some federal or state agency wants to smack against us. And so we really try to not do anything too like happy-go-lucky teddy bear, like fun for kids type thing on any branding we're doing cannabis wise, because we know that someone will eventually be like, this man is promoting his weed and his kids show and his Snoop Youth Football League and kid stuff all together. And it's like, no. These things are very separate, very demarcated. And like, we want to be very clear about that. So hopefully
Yeah.
that answers a little bit of your question, but I
Yeah.
hear you. There's a schism between his current brand, who he is, and
Yeah, I totally respect realizing, and I certainly would never suggest that anybody markets weed to kids. That's not the point. But, when I saw Snoop at the Olympics,
yeah.
I thought that that was maybe doing more for the movement and of normalizing cannabis than anything that I had seen in mainstream media in a really long time.
Oh
It
yeah.
was so awesome. And it was just one of those things of like look where we've come. Like having him be this ambassador for the US
Yes.
internationally, and what his brand has represented. I think it probably meant a lot to a lot of people. So it was really cool. And I'm just glad to see him out there. And I mean, who doesn't love Snoop, right?
Yes. Yes. It was such a
So
great,
cool.
great event. Yeah.
Well, so there's some things as I've been learning about you that you and I have in common, which is that we both went to business school, but we both have experience growing cannabis in the legacy market in California. And I've heard you talk a little bit about how important that is to the way that you see the industry. And I want to talk about that a little bit and talk about your story because, yeah, I think that there's been this stale narrative about the roots versus the suits in Canada. And I just think that it's such BS because I think that you can be a root and you can be a suit, and that's pretty effing cool if you can be both.
Yeah.
And that the people that really are the ones that win are the ones that understand the culture, understand where we've been, but
Yeah.
also can negotiate a deal or read a P&L and understand a balance sheet.
Yeah.
And that it's really the coming together that creates the real superpower. So
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about where you came from, how you see what the skills are that are most beneficial for you, really wherever you want to take it in terms of your story.
Sure. So most people that go to Wharton end up doing banking or consulting. So they're either in New York, San Francisco, or maybe they'll go to a VC, right? So maybe Bay Area. But hardly anyone goes into entertainment. And so there weren't a lot of people in Los Angeles that I knew I could hit up. I knew I wanted to be in entertainment because I think at the time it was the recession. It was 2009, right? The recession. And I was like, the one thing that I think really is recession proof is entertainment. And I know it sounds a little silly, but regardless of how well or little you're doing or how poorly you're doing, you always continue watching movies, maybe at home, maybe at theater. You'll continue watching sports. You'll continue playing video games, right? And you'll continue watching TV and listening to music. So in that way, I really wanted to be in entertainment, right? I basically learned with my then boyfriend, now husband, how to grow cannabis. I was definitely not the grower. I was helping him. I was the worst trimmer in the world because I wasn't doing it for money. I should have been doing it for money, but I was slow, right? After a while, he was like, I can't pay you hourly, babe. I got to pay you by the weight because you're really slacking. Look at these guys. And I'm just like, oh, but it was an experience building that wasn't maybe something I loved doing, but I did love bucking, and I loved hanging the things up to dry, all the other processes, the watering, the ability to watch things start budding, the what he taught me about being able to identify the boys versus the girls, right? Where to look, right? All those little things. And that I think happened prior to me getting this role in 2014 or 2015 with Snoop. And so it prepped me a lot with actually touring facilities, even if my personal experience was only at a 10, 15 light facility, right? Or grow. I was still able to ask.
That's what everything was in the old days. It was people just had their home grows, and you could make a lot of money off 10 or 15 lights back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are the days when you could get 38, 4,000 a pound,
Crazy.
And then over the decade, we saw the prices dip all the way down to about 1,800, 2,000, right? And so without that background of how your product is grown and produced, I think that managers or deal makers or brand, whoever you are in the industry as a business person, you lack the knowledge of understanding that this is truly a commodity, right? A blight can wipe out your entire crop. The thrips, any little thing, it's a sensitive, it is a weed, right? So it's strong and resilient, but there's PM, there's all these different things,
I'm sensitive weed, a very, very sensitive weed. Yeah.
And so all these little things, I remember going to a grow recently and being like, because I have never seen this in a grow, and I've seen so many grows. There was like a water, like not filter, but like a sprayer on the canopy. And I'm like, why? Right. And luckily I was with AK and Shag, and I want to get to them in a moment. But my team, and he's like, I'm gonna tell you in a second why. We get out, and Shaggy's like, it's a forceful way to get rid of PM, powdery mildew. And I'm
Mhm.
like, what? And they're like, yeah, if you just rub it off, you can't see it. And I was like, well, why didn't he do that before we came? He knew we were coming. And they're like, that's how bad of a grower he is. Like, unfortunately, he couldn't manage that particular facility in the time it took for us to get there. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then you talked a little bit about, like, I love the roots and suits things. We say, what do we say? Like OGs versus like Brads and Chads. I feel bad for anyone who's actually named that though, because that's
Oh, I
mean,
know.
a little
Yeah.
mean. I know a lot of wonderful Brads and Chads that are not bad actors. So essentially, I would say I'm the chattiest or brattiest of the three of us, right? Because I did get a degree in business. I have the traditional retail background, having worked at Target corporate. But I've grown weed. I smoke every day. Like I am a part of the culture. I'm a minority, right? Like and at the same time, like the other two guys have, all three of us have varying levels of experience growing. I am by far the lowest, right? Like Shaggy, I would say, who has been Snoop's longtime sound engineer. He has operated his own small warehouse grow. AK is kind of like on another level. He is our head of ops, and he has consulted at over 100 different grows, essentially saving them, right? Like helping turn stuff around. And then more recently, he managed over, I think, like 350,000 square feet of facility, maybe like 150,000 square feet of canopy, in Florida for a really, really big brand name that I'm sure you can guess. So, you know, we all kind of work together. He's had 25 years of grow experience. Shaggy's obviously had 15. Me, like, I haven't grown in the last 10 years. So I would say maybe I only have 2 or 3 years. But like when it comes to the culture, right? Shaggy has been recording Snoop for 16 years, 15 years now. Some of the tracks on the new album, like, he's credited. And so what happens when you have the night shift for 10 plus years of engineering at Snoop's studio? You end up smoking weed with him a lot when the nights are slow or the work is slow, right? And so out of anyone on this planet, he has the best understanding of what he likes, what is quality to him, but he's also understanding of like the different palettes of what fans or consumers might like, right? So he just gets product that we know will be on his level, that Snoop would be proud of handing to friends, right? And then AK is kind of like, he's our rain man. When we go into a facility, when we go into a grow house, it's just beautiful watching him work. He's just like, that's 50K on the floor right there a month. That's 10K right there. Like, he's just calculating, and he's just figuring out, like, what are you using here? Why are you using this fertilizer? Because it creates cardboard terps. Like, it's like stuff like that. That's really, it's really fun to kind of like go and tour with them. So I think the three of us as a team, we're really a great balance of what you called like suits and roots, right? And I think that we've built such a really symbiotic and beneficial like relationship as a team.
That's amazing. And is it just the three of you doing death row cannabis and
Yeah.
all the different stuff underneath it?
I mean, we have, I would like to say our team is definitely obviously more than that, but under my direct leadership and our group and our organization, it is the three of us, right? Obviously Snoop too, so maybe 4, right? But
Mhm.
all of our partners, I consider them to be a part of our team as well, right? The Pleasantries folks in Michigan, the Wave Seer guys in Nevada, right? Like the P37 guys in New Mexico. We're about to re-sign with the group in Canada, so we're super excited about that. We love all of our partners, and I do consider them as part of our team.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, so you're talking about building something that lasts beyond trends, that's multi-generational, that's shaping culture. And I'm wondering, kind of like, within all the things that you're working on right now, what are you most excited about?
That's a great question. I would say imminently the expansion of Swede stores. And it's the reason why is because we've been able, our strategy is more around, this is not a great example, but I think it drives home the point. it's more like a Hard Rock Cafe model as opposed to a McDonald's or Starbucks model, right? We're not trying to flood the market. We are more so indicating that if you are able to go to a territory that has rich cannabis culture or has close tie to something of Snoop's past, you can experience that, right? So,
So
not
big destinations over just every corner.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so it's more so that like if you're not from like I'm originally from Illinois, and if I fly to LA, we're not gonna open one in Illinois. There's not a lot of tie to him there, right? But Michigan, he actually spent a summer out in Michigan working at a McDonald's when his dad was out there. So like that is why Michigan's important to him, right? New York's important to him. Why? Because a lot of death row stuff, a lot
Yeah.
of performances, a lot like like New York is another place where he loves to go, right? Um obviously Amsterdam, obviously like looking at other spaces in the EU and the UK, right? But we're not trying to have like 10 stores in the Los Angeles area, right? We're not trying to have one in every single state. Like it just doesn't make sense sometimes. Um, and so I'm most excited about the expansion of the stores because it looks like in about 18 months. I don't want to eat my words here, Anna Ray, but hopefully in about 18 months we'll have another 4 or 5 coming up.
Nice. And
Yeah.
retail is tough.
Oh,
And like what is it that's going to make the Swede stores be able to make it through this crazy reckoning that we're seeing across the industry and be competitive? Like some of the markets you mentioned have a lot of competition in them already. Like Michigan is a wild market. The prices
yeah.
are like in the doldrums.
Yep.
New York is just like the most expensive real estate market in the world. Like you can't fuck around in a market like that.
Yeah.
Um, what's going to be the magic sauce for the Swede stores?
Yeah. So in a lot of these territories, I don't want to say that the experience of retail is hyper important because sometimes it's not. There are a lot of customers that just want to buy their product and leave, right? They see the dressing up of a retail store as that's why I'm paying extra $5 here. That's why I'm paying an extra XYZ or whatever it is, right? But our products, at least the death row products, and I'm confident because we work all these things out when we're talking about pricing with our operator partner on the retail side, is a perpetual like everyday kind of like Walmart, right? Like everyday low price, right? Like we're not going to sling you left and right with sales and then full price and whatever else, but like what is the general normal acceptable low price that we can give you every day? And when you come to the store, I guarantee you will be pleasantly surprised by how not gougy Swede stores are, right? Like they are, if not like commensurate, just a little cheaper than other stores. And it's because we're trying to draw you in with the experience, but not make it feel as though like, oh, Snoop is getting a giant check every time. No, that's not happening, right? Like he actually like sends people to the store sometimes to buy his own weed when he knows that time is of the essence and he needs me to come down from the valley all the way to Inglewood for him, right? Like he knows that I'm not going to be able to do that in an hour. But then I can help, like he'll be like, "Oh yeah, no worries. I'm gonna send my guy over to the store and buy Tiffany, what do they have? What's in stock?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, this is what they have in stock. I'll tell your assistant exactly what to pick up, and I'll tell them to go to the 7-Eleven and pick up some of your backwoods too, or some of your blunt rolls, right?" Like it's a little bit more like Snoop loves the store and he's been there and he keeps sending people there. So it's really, really, really great to see his like support and backing around it. Watch this space, NRA, but essentially sometime in the next month or so, he's going to be bud tending at the Swede store in LAX. Just,
Oh, that sounds fun.
but we won't announce it. So you kind of just you got to be there and experience it when he is there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fun, it seems like you're having fun. Are you still enjoying yourself on this wild ride in the industry?
I am. I mean, I've been doing this, I guess, for 11 years now, like maybe 10. And it's it's a roller coaster for sure, right? Like there are ups and downs, there are days and months where I'm like, yeah, we're killing it. And there's other times where I'm like, oh man, like we're stagnating or we got to figure out how else we are moving forward or continuing our business. And so it's super fun because I pinch myself all the time. Like I can't believe that this is my job. Like I can't believe that I am helping the biggest cannabis personality in the world with his cannabis business. However, I have to leave that out of my head, because if I do, then it ends up like it's noise. It's just extra noise that, ends up clouding my day or whatever else. I just have to keep my mind to the task at hand.
Totally. I hear
Yeah.
that. Well, so I think that we're getting closer to the end of the show. And one thing that Ben and I know he would ask if he was here, is that we'd like to talk about leadership and what it really does mean to lead, personally and as an industry. And I'd love for you to just share, riff on like what it means to you to be a leader in this space, and what are the things that you're doing to grow as a leader today and that have kind of been helpful for you in your journey so far.
Yeah, that's another great question. It's interesting to think of myself as a leader, because when you look at the face of it, I'm only working with two other people. I don't even like calling them my, I don't know, subordinates, direct. I don't even like, they're my team, right? Like they're my team. I love them. I feel like I could trust my life with them. I hope and I know that they feel the same way about me. But I I know, I think part of being a good leader is knowing what you know and what you don't know. And that's also really helpful when you're talking about the people who look up to you or are your direct reports, right? I know what AK and Shaggy know and what they don't know. And so I will often have them on calls with me when I know they're not going to say much, because they don't know what's happening, but they can listen and really absorb things via like osmosis. When maybe it would take me 2 hours to explain, they can jump on 2 or 3 calls and then they'll get it. Right. And it's, that experience is so much more educational than like me explaining certain things. Right. And they'll pick up on little things that I say or do, and they'll be like, I caught that. And I'll be like, great, because you didn't catch it before, but now you do. That's amazing. Right. And so I think that's a big part of leadership, is maybe showing and not telling. Right. And having them kind of understand why you do things, and maybe even express how they would do things differently. In the industry, I would say my biggest concern around being a leader in this space is, this sounds really strange, but follow me here when I say like the perception of the industry of you. I don't mean so much like, oh, how do people see me? Like I'm concerned. I'm a little insecure. It's not like that. It's more so I want to make sure people know that I am not a bad actor in this space, because there have been so many, and a lot of people around celebrities in cannabis are often construed as such. It's because of maybe some of their actions, maybe some of the things that they've done or said, or how they've slighted other people. But I just want to make sure that people know that this team, myself and the two other guys that are with me, are not in any way we are very understanding. We're fair. We're not trying to like grab a check and run away with it. We are trying to lift all boats with the tide, right? And so I wish other people would take that to heart, right? Like being not just honest, but trying to be a good business person and steward of this plant and this industry, right? As opposed to,
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but there was a pretty big brand owner recently that said like, I want to get paid. I want to be cashed out. I want like, oh, who did he say? I want like Bristol Myers Squibb to buy me out. I want the cash. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so
Mhm.
it's not for the culture then. And like you always hear it for the culture and whatever else, but it's like, you see where the true tendencies and motives lie,
For sure. Yeah. Kind of underlying, like I'm hearing you say, like being willing to do the hard thing. And I think that really is an important part of leadership. And it's when it's fun, it's not hard.
You're
It's
right.
it's when you have
Exactly.
to like, be face to face with people that aren't aligned with you, and you have to say the hard thing and realize like, oh, maybe this is an opportunity for me to cash out, but it's not aligned with what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or to help someone else realize that
Yeah.
they're not ever going to get to cash out. Yeah, I mean, people in cannabis, I think more and more different from 10 years ago, realize that, oh, they could probably make like 2 to 10 times more working in other industries. And if you're here, it's because you love the plant, you're a crazy entrepreneurial rebel. You're trying to do something different, but you're not going to make as much money as you could at a hedge fund or in banking or at a VC firm.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in the wrong place if that's what you're trying to do. Amazing. Well, oh my gosh, I have loved having this conversation with you. It is so fun. I love to just talk with other people that are building and creating and navigating their way through all of this, because it's constant. Like there is an endless change and shift going on in this space. And that's what I keep coming back to, is that like that's the one thing that I know that we can all depend on as leaders, is that it's going to keep changing. And if we're ready for that, then we can get through it. Not only can we get through it, but we can create and do some cool new shit in it. And it sounds like that's really what you're doing. So hats off.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I hope that Germany is amazing. And as we wrap, it is time for our last call. And so, Tiffany, this is your opportunity to leave our listeners with a final message, advice, call to action, whatever you want. So, what is your last call?
Cannabis smokers, hemp smokers in Texas, call your representatives and make sure that they put pressure on Abbott to not sign SB3. I know we are only 3 days before the deadline, but that is, if you want access, if you want freedom of access, please, please, please call your representatives in Texas, or at least vote them out maybe next time, for people who are in your corner for your freedoms. I would also say, I know Father's Day was this last weekend, but if you are in a state where hemp is legal, please go to trydeathrow.com. This is some of the same stuff that Snoop smokes. Sometimes we tell him that it's THCA, sometimes we don't, just to get his reactions. And he loves some of the product that we've given him. So please go ahead and try it out. I think there's some BOGO deals and free shipping over a certain amount of money right now. So feel free to go on and write a review if you like it. And even if you don't, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you so much, Anna Ray. This was amazing. It was really great chatting with you. And I'm sorry Ben couldn't be here.
I know, he's jealous. He really wanted to be here. In Japan, it's like 2 a.m. and he was going to join the recording, but I told him it was all good. And he was like, I don't think I can pull it off. My wife will be pissed. Anyway, thank you so much. Have an amazing day. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? How can they reach out?
I'm on LinkedIn. So I think it's at Tiffany Tin, I think. I'm actually not quite sure. But on Instagram, I am also Tiffany Tin. So it's just a spoonerism. It's Tiffany Chin, but the CH and the T are swapped. And then I'm not really on anything else. So those are the two main places. Yeah.
Cool. Well, have a great day and we'll see you later. Bye, Tiffany.
Thank you.
She is so cool. I am so glad that I got to just hang out with Tiffany Chin, and I can't wait to do it in person. And I feel like she's someone that I definitely want to share a joint with. So Tiffany, the invitation is open. Folks, thank you so much for engaging. If you joined our live recording, you are awesome. If you're listening later, we really appreciate you leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this to help make sure that listeners like you get access to our content. Thank you to our teams at Vertosa and Wolf Meyer, and to our amazing producer, Eric Rossetti. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please like, subscribe, and share High Spirits with your colleagues, your friends, and your family. And always, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, keep your spirits high. That's the show.